Evernight's banner is about to leave, and today I'm here with my final impressions as someone who's used her at a lot of investment levels and have practically done nothing but use her since she did release. Before I do get into the video, be sure to check the description to join the Discord server. The server is about mainly Starro and also other gachas, but you don't have to talk about gachas exclusively. There is channels like a general chat and also an other game section for you to talk about any non-gacha related things as well. Anyway, let's get into the video. So as I did mention, I've practically done nothing but use Evernight. She's probably been my most used character ever since she did release, as I've used her on every half of endgame. Any reset that's happened in the meantime, I've used her on every stage, and anomaly, I've used her for my Zero Cycle on the Kings and Check boss as well. Plenty of different teams for Zero Cycles, as I like doing that with a lot of characters. I mess around with different teams. But yeah, I've used her at E1S1, I've used her at E2S1, I've used her at E0S1, E0S0, and then, of course, mine, which is at E6. I've used her at E6S1, E6S2 even, because I had her S2 for a bit, and then finally E6S5. So E0S0, while it is good, it does run into the problem of not really having light code options. In my case, I usually either put the Battle Pass light code, which not many people might have because they might not purchase anything in the game in general. I have tested having the max HP light code, or at least the highest one with base HP, I mean. Whatever options you do have for more down bad scenarios, I have tried them, and of course, when it comes to that performance, she still can very much clear, especially depending on your team investment. Like, if you have the right team and such, she still does very well. And I'm glad that is the case. She doesn't need a light cone. If you have it, of course, that's going to be the biggest jump. If you have a spare Cashless one, if you're not using Cashless and that sub DPS team, you can just throw that on her. If you have the Battle Pass one, you can throw that on her. She does have solid options, but when it comes to outside of that, Remembrance is not very free to play when it does come to light cones. So that was the one problem, but she still did perform good enough. And then, of course, once I did test out S1, it was doing really solid. Very, very consistent damage. Gaining Memorial stacks was very simple. A lot of my testing was also without Hyacinth, because that was my biggest concern, was maybe she's also going to be another case like Castrus, who's very reliant on Hyacinth and Hyacinth Light Cone. But I'm very, very, very glad to say that Evernight is not anywhere near as reliant. Castrus without Hyacinth is like night and day. Evernight, lol, no pun intended, promise. It's not night and day. It's actually still a difference. Like, you can definitely feel it, because of course Hyacinth is the best sustain in the game right now. And she is far and none the best for these HP scalers, increasing the max HP, like on providing Drain, which can gain more stacks and stuff. But it's really not that much of a gap as opposed to Cassius with Hyacinth and without. That was my biggest concern. I was really hoping it wasn't going to be another case where it was just going to be a big difference. Again, the difference is very much noticeable, but it's not insanely big. So a lot of my testing was actually without Hyacinth, so I used her with a regular sustain, such as someone like Luocha or Linksha even. And I did have a lot of attempts be sustainless, because the best thing about Evernight, as opposed to someone like Castrus, she only drains her self HP. She only drains her own HP, so it's not like Castrus, who drains everyone's HP to make sustainless impossible. It's actually very, very possible and very, very manageable to do sustainless runs with Evernight, which of course is a byproduct of also raising her skill ceiling, which is also what makes her a lot more fun in my opinion. So once actually getting her light cone, running her sustainless, or even with the sustain, her damage is very, very good and very, very consistent. Only problem is just the single target scenario, where her whole design philosophy is being for fully AoE. So at E0S1, she ended up being something that's just really strong in AoE scenarios, or even blast scenarios, very good. But when it came to single target, it was a bit iffy. Not bad by any means, still definitely passable, but of course that was the one part that she might struggle a little bit. Then going up to E1, which did end up solving the issue, because now Memo Sprites of hers and also the team will do more damage with the less enemies on the field. And if there's just one enemy, it increases original damage to 150% for Memo Sprites. That really did just solve the one issue she had with being single target damage spread, as again, she is a fully AoE character. So now with her E1, that issue is solved, and she practically is the perfect character. Another overlooked thing that I didn't actually mention in the previous section was about her building. Building her is actually a lot more simple. Crit rate isn't the biggest concern, because she gives herself 35%, which is a lot, plus the 5% base, so that's 40% on own. So just getting to 65% outside of battle as a main DPS with RMC buff, technically you only need 55%, so that's even better. It's a lot easier to balance, because all you need is HP% and crit damage in that case, because she also doesn't need speed in the most part. Best builds and most common builds are going to run HP boots. You have really no need to build any speed. Very niche cases where you can, like if you want a super hyper speed, like 200 speed plus with speed boots, something like that. then in that case, it potentially might work, but in most cases, it wouldn't. So it's really just stacking HP and also just stacking crit damage. So how easy it is to build her is also just another big W. But again, E1S1 really is just where she ends up fixing her only issue she had, where now she is just insane in all kinds of content. And once you jump to E2, she quite literally becomes God. You practically gain access to having full uptime on Darkest Riddle because now it extends it to 2 charges. So you really just always have Darkest Riddle active. As a sub DPS or main DPS, she always will have it active, which is going to significantly increase her own damage and also team damage because now it's a permanent 30% damage increase to enemies. On top of that, her Memoria stacks get amplified so much because anytime you gain a single one, you will gain 2 extra. So if you gain 1, you gain 3. If you gain 3, you gain 5. So on and so forth. You will always gain 2 extra above that limit. Not only that, but both Evernight and her member sprites get a 40% increase to their crit damage, which of course is going to significantly increase their damage overall. That E2 is just so loaded. Crit damage, more stacks from Memoria, and also gaining permanent access to Darkest Riddle. It's insane how big that E2 is. If I honestly had to be completely honest, I think that's the best DPS E2 there is. Of course, you could obviously argue Castrus and Phynon as well, as both of them have a insanely broken one as well, but I really do think Evernight is just better. It's actually just unreal how good that dupe is, and if you do have an E2S1 Evernight, or even an E2S0 Evernight, you have a DPS that is going to quite literally destroy every mode blindfolded. At E2, she destroys pure fiction. It's not even a problem. Even in APOC, she does do good. A bit less so in APOC, it's a bit annoying, but she still does do good. And then MOC, not even a question. And she can do all anomaly sages as well. And again, this is all counting with no Hyacine. This is just her main DPS. And if you're doing sustainless, or if you're just running a more general sustain, like again, the Wocha, Linkshore, or even Gallagher, she's still just going to perform so good. At E2, she's just insane. It practically doubles her damage output, and it is just absolutely broken. So at base and at early investment, but she's just insane. E0S0 a bit less so because she has a single target issue and then obviously the Lycone issue, which might be a bit annoying. You get S1, boom, now you have a really strong Lycone. She does great damage. Her only problem becomes a single target. You stag E1 and now she has no problems. You gain E2 and she goes from being broken to, oh, what the hell am I even using anymore? And now for the final, or well, I guess second final part, I'm going to talk about my experience as someone who does have her E6. Originally, I was going to stop at E2, but you know, the whole thing happened in my video. You can go watch the summons if you want. But at E4, I wish it was better. It's just weakness break efficiency, which is kind of garbage. Especially for her because you technically want enemies to be active so they can attack you to gain more stacks. So it's a bit annoying sometimes. But her E6, it's not only great for herself, but also great for your team because now her existing on the field will give everyone a 20% increase to all type res pen. So as a main DPS and sub DPS, that obviously applies to herself, it's going to significantly increase her damage if you have someone like Chibi on the team, or again, even Hyacine, or as a sub DPS for Castrus, but if you have an E6 Evernight, she's not really a sub DPS. They are all going to do more damage too. And the craziest part is gaining 30% of Memoria consuming that attack back when you do detonate. Combine that with the E2, because with E2, you just get an insane amount of stacks. You constantly have enough to constantly detonate this Memo Spray every skill proc. You already had enough. You can always proc it at around 16 plus, 16 to 30 on average with E2. But with E6, you have so much. You get so much refunded. And if you get big hits where you get to like 100 plus in one of the harder modes like Anomaly, you can get a bunch of that refunded and then you can keep going higher. It's insane how much Memoria uptime you can have on E6. Since you're getting back 30% constantly, so every big attack you do gets 30% back, so you get that for the next attack, which is going to do a lot more as it normally would. Her E6 is actually just crazy. Originally, I didn't think it was like an insane E6 as opposed to some of the other ones we've gotten. But now that I've really gotten myself to use it and seeing how big it is really strong. I didn't mention this yet, but I actually did want to talk about her E3 and E5, mainly E5. Usually these talent increases are horrible. They really don't do anything. Even for someone like Phynon who gets a big damage increase multiplier, it really doesn't do much for him. But her E5 especially, which is the one that also increases the Memo Spread skill for the detonate, because of her HP scaling and also per point of Memoria, it actually significantly increased her damage. When I tested her E6 and stuff, I was actually shocked at how big of a difference in damage it was as opposed to E2, and I was really confused why. because it was going up like millions, and I knew it wasn't just because 20% all-time respond. Even though it is strong, I thought there would be a different reason. And then I saw that the talent upgrades was obviously increasing the HP amount for the detonate per point of Memoria as well. So every point of Memoria you have is increasing the damage per point from the HP scale, which is why it significantly impacted her damage. So at E6, because of E5 and all that stuff, it is just insane. So at E6, she is just absolutely broken. And then I will talk a bit about S5. S5 increases the max HP she gets by double, more defense ignore from Memo Sprites, more energy back, and also more damage, which is good for her just because her multipliers are a bit on the lower side. So the S5 increase from S1 was actually very noticeable as opposed to someone like Anaxa, even who doesn't really get too much. Most S5 cases might get like a few 100Ks, but I definitely did feel that S5 Evernight got like 100K, not 100K, like a million plus. It's actually insane how big of a difference it did just because of the HP scaling and all the extra stuff it does provide. I thought it would be a lot better as opposed to getting S5 Anaxa, because originally I was going to get S5 Anaxa over Evernight because I like Anaxa more. But I really thought about it and I was like, I'm going to go for it on Evernight specifically just because it's actually going to be a good increase for her. And lo and behold, it ended up being an insane increase. So I don't regret the S5 whatsoever. Her damage is insane. You've probably already seen enough from the background footage to see how insane mine is. So at quite literally every single level, I am very satisfied with this character. My impressions at every single level is I'm very satisfied. Of course, the E0-ish has that single target issue, then especially if you don't have a Lycon, it is still fine. That is my only complaint, but with a bit of vertical investment, it completely solves her issues, and I really do think she is just absolutely broken, and is also one of my favorite DPSs to use because the big numbers are really damn funny. Evernight is also one of my favorite characters now, not as much as Adventuring especially, and also not Anaxa, but still up there. Loved her in the story. I really do hope we get to see her again at some point soon. So I'm glad I was able to E6 a character I really like and also have a bunch of fun with. And also her Eidolon arts. Oh my god, they're so good. Her E6 art is never going to be top for me, I don't think. But that does wrap up my final impressions. Again, talking about every single investment level and what I did think. Every single dupe she has except E4, because screw that, E4 is just insane. Honestly, the talent upgrades are more useful. She is just so goddamn strong. Potentially in the future, there will be future Remembrance Lycons that are free to play that might help the no Lycon situation. Hope that is the case for people that maybe only stack her E0S0. But as a main DPS, because that's mainly what I used her on, as caster sub DPS, byproduct of her being great as a main DPS, she was really strong. As a main DPS, broken. As caster sub DPS, broken. And even on funny teams, she is just really strong. I'm having a blast with her. I probably continue having a blast with her. Evernight plus Anaxa is just insanely fun. But yeah, again, I am very satisfied. I am very glad I was able to invest this much, and I will use her for a long time to come. Anyway, if you did pull for Evernight, comment down your actual level of investment, and if you're enjoying her as much as I am. And that's the video. Peace out.